It's Wednesday, June 26th, 2024. Did Obama ever really leave? The regime has not yet begun to gaslight on the economy, and the Associated Press says we have to kill babies to save them. Next on the AM Update. New York Congressman Jamal Bowman last night lost his Democrat primary. That was in New York's 16th congressional district. Bowman, and this is really saying something because the bar is high, especially on that side of the aisle in Congress, is one of the most certifiably insane individuals in all of Washington, D.C. You'll remember videos of him. One of his first actions, seemingly, when he was a congressman, was getting in the face of Congressman Thomas Massie and yelling at him, getting inside of his bubble on the issue of gun grabbing. Other notable results across the country: Lauren Boebert in Colorado's 4th congressional district, she held on. She actually prevailed in her GOP primary. A few Trump-backed congressional candidates lost their primaries last night as well. In Colorado, also, Jeff Crank beat Dave Williams. He was the party chair in Colorado. He was the one actually behind that email that sent out to Colorado GOP's list earlier this month calling to burn all pride flags. He lost. He was endorsed by Donald Trump. That's kind of a shame. In South Carolina, Sherry Biggs beat Trump-endorsed Mark Burns. And in Utah, John Curtis won that GOP Senate primary over Trent Staggs, Brad Wilson, and a couple of other candidates as well. There's a short roundup of some notable primary results from last night. We begin with this story from Fox News, which I'm very confused about. Former President Obama is again stepping in to help lock up votes and dollars during the home stretch of President Biden's quest for the White House, apparently having ditched the concerns that reportedly made Obama wary of Biden's candidacy in 2020. Biden's rematch with Donald Trump features a second encore from Obama, whose celebrity and status with Democratic donors has been a financial and public relations boon to Biden at a time when Biden is supposedly facing increasing questions about his record, plans, and cognitive abilities. Obama's 2024 fundraising efforts mirror his actions when he stepped in to help boost Biden in 2020, including a $11 million fundraiser that marked the duo's first such event together since the Obama administration. This year, during an event in New York, the duo, along with former President Bill Clinton, raked in $26 million at an event not too long ago, just a couple of weeks ago in Los Angeles, a star-studded event. The pair actually raked in $30 million. My question is this actually news? It seems like the Biden administration has actually been run really behind the scenes by Obama-istas. Everybody knows that. It's not that much of a surprise that Obama is stepping in, at least publicly once again, to help fundraise for Biden. Nevertheless, you have to take this into consideration. During two events, the two of them pulled in more than $50 million. That's nothing to sneeze at, despite Donald Trump's recent fundraising numbers and hauls, which have been pretty hefty. Democrats once again seem poised to vastly outspend Republicans coming up this November. Nevertheless, the regime has not yet begun to gaslight on the issue of the economy. Here's White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre yesterday on MSNBC.
So yes, eggs and milk, and there were grocery things that were up. It has gone down. It has gone down since 2022. Gas prices, because of the actions that this president took, and let's not forget there was an invasion, but Russia did obviously into Ukraine that caused gas prices to tick up. The president took action, tapped the SPR, and we saw gas prices go down. The president has met the moment with every issue that we have had in front of us.
Basically, no syllable of that is actually rooted in anything resembling truth. Of course, you're using the baseline of 2022 to illustrate food prices going down. That's not true. Food prices are up since Joe Biden took office. We can talk about why that's actually the case later, or at least part of why that's the case later. In terms of tapping the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to lower gas prices, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works, at least not in the long term. Again, that's just blatant gaslighting. But wait till you hear this. This is Janet Yellen of the Treasury talking about what's to blame for many of the problems we have now.
To your point, Secretary Yellen, what impact would Donald Trump have on our economy if he's elected?
Well, look, I'm governed by the Hatch Act, and I can't get into electoral politics. I guess I could just make a couple of policy-oriented.
Yeah, I can't get into electoral politics, but anyway, hold my beer. Here I go.
The signature policy from the Trump years was the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, and it promised an investment boom, which really did not materialize. It gave huge tax breaks to corporations and to wealthy individuals, and it resulted in an enormous increase in the deficit and lowered tax revenues below historic norms. And I think it's responsible for many of the problems that we face now.
That's the bill. I think that passed late 2017 into 2018, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. That's what you're focusing on, Treasury Secretary Yellen. I mean, there is that little bill that was passed in 2020. Man, I can't remember. Can't remember what that was called. It was like over $1 trillion. But yeah, no, that doesn't have anything to do with the position that we're in today. Just what is that position? According to Zillow, the typical salary required nationwide for homeownership is now $106,000, a 61% increase from the $59,000 required just 4 years ago, according to Zillow. Was the Tax Cut and Jobs Act passed 4 years ago? No, it was a little longer than that. Huh. I wonder what changed. It's interesting. They have a number of somewhat legitimate ways to attack Donald Trump, at least economically. We talked about that just in passing a few moments ago. There are a number of things like that little old bill that was passed in 2020 that cut everybody, $1,200 checks, and it cost over $2 trillion, actually. The CARES Act. That has nothing to do with where we are, according to our Treasury Secretary. Anyway, here's Nancy Pelosi.
Do you have confidence in the Supreme Court? I mean, they've yet to rule on this immunity thing, all this thing about Alito and the flags and Clarence Thomas and his wife. I mean, do you have confidence in the Supreme Court?
No, I think they've gone rogue. It's most unfortunate. But it's unfortunate further to see what the other justice, what happened to the Chief Justice.
Don't know what she's talking about there. But yeah, the Supreme Court has gone rogue. I can think of at least 3 cases just this term alone, that have been 9-0 decisions. But yes, the Supreme Court has gone rogue somehow, only in the broken brain of Nancy Pelosi. Anyway, let's get serious for a minute. Staying on CNN, here's a drag queen.
I'm curious for you, first of all, what this day means to you. And second of all, have both Democrats and Republicans agreed to meet with you?
Yes, we will be meeting with both Democrats and Republicans.
Let you listen to the current sentiment that's being shared by former President Donald Trump, who, of course, is running for re-election. Here it is.
Day one, I will sign a new executive order to cut federal funding of any school pushing critical race theory, transgender insanity.
We already see so many attacks on our queer community. I already don't feel safe in my own hometown, just dressed in drag like this.
You'd probably live in a good town then. That's somebody named Bridget Bandit, who is a dude dressed like a ridiculous caricature of a woman. He's actually nightmare fuel, but that's what CNN covers these days. I'm glad you cannot see his face in front of you right now. It is terrifying. But yes, if you live in a town where you don't feel safe walking down the street as a groomer that you are, you probably live in a pretty good little town. Bad news, everyone. I regret to inform you the Second Amendment is now a public health crisis. Here's Surgeon General Vivek Murthy.
Today, for the first time in the history of our office, I am issuing a Surgeon General's advisory on firearm violence. It outlines the urgent threat firearm violence poses to the health and well-being of our country. As a doctor, I've seen the consequences of firearm violence up close in the lives of the patients I've cared for over the years. These are moms and dads, sons and daughters, all of whom were robbed of their physical and mental health by senseless acts of violence.
That is Surgeon General Vivek Murthy declaring a state of emergency or something, an advisory on firearm violence. It's a public health advisory. You know, the question then becomes, when everything is a public health notice, a public health advisory, nothing is. Yet, full speed ahead. We learned our lesson, or not, back in 2020 when they allowed us to be shut down. They'll just turn anything whatsoever, into a public health emergency. Here is Vivek Murthy doing the same thing with firearms, although I saw very few people, thankfully, talking about this yesterday. And now here's this. CNN's Van Jones is one of those broken squirrels who occasionally finds the right time of day, twice a day. Am I mixing all of my metaphors correctly there? He was on CNN recently talking rather honestly about the state of the Democratic Party as it pertains to actual anti-Semitism. Here he is.
At the same time, I think it's a little bit naive for some people to think that if Israel would suddenly stop doing what it's doing, that rainbows and bunnies and sunshine would break out over the Middle East and it would all be fine. The hostages have to be returned. If you can call for a ceasefire on both sides. Hamas is still firing its rockets. They still have hostages kidnapped. So this is a complex issue. But here's what's not complicated. Politics can be complicated. Geopolitics can be really complicated. How you treat your neighbors, how you treat people in your community is not complicated. You don't run up. I haven't seen any Jewish people running up on mosques with Israeli flags. If they did that, I'd be denouncing that too. There are certain things you don't do. It is a red line. If you want to be a part of a protest and they say, we're going to go to a Jewish community center, we're going to go to a mosque, we're going to go to a Jewish restaurant. That's not a protest. That's a pogrom. That's an anti-Jewish bigoted act. If you want to be a part of a protest, let's go to a mosque. Let's go and harass the Muslims. That's not a protest. So we've got to get clear in our country what is a fair protest about policy, you can agree or disagree, and what's going after people, human beings, terrifying moms, grandmas, children who are trying to be a part of a neighborhood. The Jewish neighborhoods in L.A. are well known. Nobody is confused where they are. So if you show up there wearing a keffiyeh, you show up there with your face covered, you show up there chanting river to the sea, that would be just like a white person running up with a Confederate flag in Harlem. You're not trying to start a conversation. You're trying to start a fight. Stop doing that. Don't do that. We don't want more violence. We don't want more fear. We don't want more terrified people. We've got to be able to come together as a country. If either side had an easy answer, it'd have been solved.
Bless his heart. Bless his heart. He's right there, And that takes a little bit of courage to call out his own side on this issue. But bless his heart, he doesn't understand the Hydra that he's dealing with. He doesn't understand the mouth of madness, the mouth of evil that he is dealing with here. And he thinks that just going on CNN and pleading with the pro-Hamas orcs, he's trying to be, I don't know, some character from Lord of the Rings just pleading with the orcs. Hey, listen to my well-reasoned stance. Please don't go into the Shire. You're terrorizing those people. No, you're dealing with orcs here. And poor Van Jones, bless his heart, doesn't seem to realize that. And finally, air analysis, slightly acidic, mostly necessary. You might have seen this headline from the Associated Press. Infant mortality rate rose 8% in wake of Texas abortion ban, study shows. In the wake of Texas's abortion ban, the state's infant death rate increased and more died of birth defects. The analysis out of Johns Hopkins University is the latest research to find higher infant mortality rates in states with abortion restrictions. In response to that story, one individual named Jill Filipovich, she is a CNN columnist, ex-lawyer, had this to say on X, quote, "The study found that the most significant driver of the increase in infant deaths was babies who died of congenital anomalies. In other words, women were forced by Texas law to have babies everyone knew would suffer and die." Really? I wonder, does that study show anything about the babies who were expected to die and actually lived? That's my first question. But I think a better analysis of this story comes from the Babylon Bee's Joel Berry, who actually had this take. He said, "We have to kill the babies to stop them from dying." That's essentially the message of this story from the Associated Press, the study from Johns Hopkins. It's showing infant mortality rising because they banned baby killing. So the subtext there is, we have to kill babies to save them? What kind of mad result is that? That's insane. Nobody in their right mind would actually say that out loud, at least not in that way, but that's what Johns Hopkins is saying. That's what Jill Filipovich is saying. That's what the Associated Press is echoing. Infant mortality, yes, it may rise, but of course, mortality, other defects, they're going to rise when there are more babies in the world. You know what else is going to rise? The number of babies being born. This is just abject wickedness and a broken brain on full display. Thank God in states like Texas and elsewhere, they have curbed right now, not fully abolished, but curbed right now the practice of baby killing. I hope that expands more across the country. I hope eventually we can get on to other forms of abortion as well. But for now, what Texas and other states are doing is good. Don't let any broken brain lefty tell you different. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.